A little bit smoky out today, so it might not be the best day to be out and about, especially with the heat too. Got some record heat, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Recent news, what's going on in Portland. Measure 110 has been in the news a lot lately. That was the measure that decriminalized small amounts of drugs for personal use. So we'll get into that. And as always, we'll talk a little bit about the real estate market. Stick around. I don't know how much you can pick it up in this video, but it's a little bit hazy out. You can kind of see that back there on the horizon. When I went outside this morning, I got a hint of wildfire smoke, which I think for us, a lot of us Portlanders, gives us a little bit of PTSD. For the first time in my lifetime, at least, about 3 years ago, we had wildfire smoke that completely engulfed the city. And now anytime you smell that smell, it's a little bit troubling. There's a wildfire about 30 minutes to the east of here in Sandy, and then another about 45 minutes to an hour of here south towards Silverton. So I'm not sure which fire we're smelling here. And I think the Sandy one, the evacuation notice has been lifted. So those fires, Portland isn't in any kind of danger from those fires, but again, it's just smelling that wildfire smoke, a little bit troubling. And I looked at the air quality, and it said the air quality was about moderate. Didn't actually pick up the weather, didn't say anything about there being wildfire smoke. So when I first looked outside, I thought it might just be clouds, but at this point, I'm pretty sure it is smoke. We're also experiencing record heat. It's kind of a heat wave off of the coast right now in the Pacific that's mostly impacting Oregon and Washington. So there's a lot of people trying to escape that heat. The Portland metro area has some cooling shelters that people can go to. A lot of people going to rivers like you might kind of see in the background. Now, one little tip though, you want to watch out for algae. Algae can make you or your pet, like your dog, very sick. And that's something else that we've kind of experienced in recent years that wasn't really a thing growing up. I think it wasn't quite warm enough for that algae to grow. But also if it gets too hot, I think that also kills off the algae. So I think today is pretty safe. We're getting into the hundreds today, but something to keep on the radar if you're going to go into one of these rivers around the Portland metropolitan area. The river you're seeing behind me is the Clackamas River, which runs into the Willamette. The Willamette is the river that goes right through downtown Portland. All right, measure 10. So that's been in the news a lot lately. I think because some things have sort of come to light as far as the results of that program. If you recall, Oregon was one of the first states to legalize marijuana. That was back in 2015. And there's a lot of talk of what was going to happen after Oregon legalized marijuana. You know, there's a lot of people that were opposed to it that were saying, you know, that things like traffic accidents were going to go up. More people were going to be hospitalized. It was going to cause more harm to people. Anecdotally, I haven't noticed a difference. And probably the only thing I could say I've noticed is maybe there's been a few times in a few places where I smelled the smoke outdoors where maybe you might not have otherwise smelled it. But other than that, I haven't noticed any change since 2015, since it's become legalized. Read a few studies online about traffic accidents. Read some that say that they've gone up, some that say that they haven't. None of it seems to be very conclusive, but just anecdotally, nothing has really changed in Oregon since marijuana was legalized. Now, on the other hand, Measure 110 that legalized all drugs in small amounts for personal use, anecdotally, it does seem like quite a few things have changed. Now, first of all, it's probably not just the measure. This took place about 3 years ago when we had lockdowns, when we had the pandemic, when the city said that people could basically camp wherever they wanted. So that combination of lockdowns, people not coming out into the city, and then people camping wherever they want, and then the open air drug use, it seemed like those factors really kind of contributed to some of the anecdotes that we do see now, which is a lot of people that are visibly inebriated in some parts of Portland. So this isn't like stoners just being high or something like that. These are people that, I don't know how else to put it, but like people that are visibly tweaking out, people that are having mental health episodes. That is something that you do see quite a bit in a fair amount of places around Portland that you didn't really quite see before. Now, I believe the whole idea behind Measure 110 was to stop putting people in prison for doing small personal amounts of drugs, and to take the funds that would have been allocated towards that, funds that you would use for policing, jailing, prosecuting people, so police officers, jail workers, people that work in the court system, to take those funds that are dedicated towards those things and those resources and reallocate those towards detox facilities and things to help people that are addicted to these drugs, that want to get off of these drugs, to help these people stop doing these drugs, as opposed to just putting them in prison, in which they're probably, once they get out, they're just going to go back to doing what they were doing before. Which in principle I think makes sense to me. It didn't seem to be effective just to put people in prison for doing drugs. So if we can take those funds that we use to do that and reallocate those funds towards helping those people, in principle I think that makes sense, and I think that's what was supposed to happen with Measure 110. But anecdotally, it doesn't feel like things have gotten better since Measure 110. Aside from all the people that you can see that are on the streets that are having problems with drugs, Measure 110 was supposed to have created a much larger fund to allocate towards resources to help these people. If anything, since Measure 110 has passed, it feels like there's, anecdotally, again, it just feels like there's been less resources. Now, technically, there has been more resources, and I've got some numbers I'll get to you here in just a second, but I think it feels like for most citizens, it doesn't feel like there's been more help as far as getting people rehabilitated. Now, the person that was in charge of this came out, recently resigned, I think about a month ago, and recently came out and made some public statements. There's an article, I'll put it actually in the description of this video if you want to read the article yourself. I'm not going to recall everything off the top of my head. I've got some notes though. The person's name was Angela Carter, and this was first made public last week. Comes a public scrutiny of the program. Angela Carter's letter, made public last week by the Lund Report, which I'll include in the description, comes as public scrutiny of the program is increased, and lawmakers have sought to address Measure 110's shaky implementation. Ballot measure sought to improve treatment options for people addicted to drugs and de-emphasize criminal penalties, but its adoption coincided with the rise of fentanyl epidemic and overdoses across Oregon. But its adoption coincided with the rise of fentanyl, which we didn't really have before, the fentanyl epidemic, and overdoses across Oregon, which I mentioned in my last update, my last video. We're seeing a lot of those ODs, and they're taking a lot of resources and things like ambulances. So that's produced, this is from the Oregonian, that has produced intense criticism of the program, with skeptics faulting the state for eliminating criminal penalties before establishing alternate pathways to encourage people to seek treatment for addictions. In a statement Monday, health authority officials noted that Carter, this is the person that was in charge, their name is Angela Carter. Health authority officials noted that Carter has not held an active role in Oregon's Measure 110 program since going on leave in August of 2022, so been on leave for almost a year. The department staffer named Jessica Carroll has been running the program on an interim basis since then. Carter, who also filed a workplace civil rights complaint against the health authority in January, resigned July 17th of this year. Carter said they were several years into substance abuse recovery themselves, but had no experience leading a treatment program before the health authority hired them at an annual salary of $103,000. Carter's license to practice naturopathy lapsed at the end of 2022, so this person is an ND, naturopathic doctor, not to be confused with MD. In March of 2023, the Oregon Board of Naturopathic Medicine sanctioned them for leaving about 700 unsigned patient charts when they left the Equi Institute in 2019, and for not following guidance around drug interactions and opioid prescriptions for a patient treated over 2 years beginning in 2017. Carter said they went on medical leave because months of overwork had caused carpal tunnel syndrome in both hands and herniated discs in their neck and back, making it impossible to continue running the Measure 110 program. Let's see if I can find some shade. The health agency's Measure 110 program administered about $270 million in grants to community organizations for treatment centers. A separate oversight and accountability council chooses where the money will go. A January audit by the Oregon Secretary of State concluded that the Oregon Health Authority hasn't properly established roles and responsibilities for implementing Measure 110 and failed to provide support for the successful implementation of that program. Carter also faults the agency for the way it has rolled out Measure 110. They said the health authority delayed adding staff for months and ultimately hired temporary employees working out of state through the consulting firm Deloitte. I am deeply disappointed and honestly horrified that the OHA is working in direct opposition to its mission to serve our communities in Oregon through intentional destructive management of such a crucial program, Carter wrote in an email to the Oregonian. Now, there's quite a bit more in the article from the Oregonian and from the Lund Report. Again, you can read about those in the description. A lot of finger pointing going on, though, obviously. Now, before Measure 10, there were 13 detox facilities with 201 beds located in 9 of Oregon's 36 counties. Now, after Measure 110, there are 22 detox facilities, 308 beds in 14 counties. But despite that, there are reports of a lot of people being turned away that are visiting these detox facilities. So you wouldn't know it just anecdotally by spending time around Portland that we have more facilities and more beds, which I think is really probably the biggest complaint for most people, is they're just not feeling the results that they expected to get with that measure. So lots of talk about repealing that measure right now. So again, from the Oregonian, the manager, Oregon hired in August of 2021 to run its Measure 110 drug decriminalization program, went on extended medical leave a year later and resigned in July with a blistering letter that accused the Oregon Health Authority of failing to ensure the program had adequate resources to move quickly enough. So we've heard quite a bit about that over the past year or so, but definitely in the past few months, you've heard a lot about Measure 110 and people complaining about the open air drug use. I'm not sure who's going to replace that person, or if anybody will for that matter. Not sure what's going to happen with Measure 110, but there's been a lot of complaints from the citizens about how that's gone down. It's a touchy topic for sure. Let me know what you think the best solution is. If you want to put in the comments what you think that Portland should do in this situation. There's definitely a lot of people that are fed up with the open air drug use. I think a fair amount of people agree that it's not always best, or maybe never best, just to put somebody in prison for doing drugs. But at the same time, we can't just have people doing fentanyl and being completely intoxicated or belligerent around everybody else. So something's got to change on that front. I'll keep you updated with what that is. And by the way, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, we show you what it's like to eat, sleep, play, all the pros and cons, lots of vlog videos, lots of videos that show you about the neighborhoods, videos about cost of living, and just videos about what's happening in Oregon, specifically around Portland. So if you want to see more videos like this, make sure and hit the subscribe button. My name is Seth Marchant. I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of Oregon. I help a lot of people relocate to this area. If you're somebody that's thinking about moving here, you can call, text, email. You can click the link below in the description. You can hit that QR code if you want to visit our website and find our contact information there. You can schedule a Zoom call with us. No matter how you get in touch with us, we've got your back when it comes to moving to Oregon. All right, so what else is going on right now? The Clackamas County Fair just started today. That'll run through the weekend. That's in Canby, which is about 30 minutes south of Portland. It's got all the typical fair stuff: rides, fair food, fried turkey legs, animals, rodeo. Lots of exhibits, Renaissance Fair. There's 3 stages, lots of live entertainment. It's been going on for over 100 years. Great time if you're into those types of things, into county fairs. Got all the typical fair stuff. Salem hosts the 34th Pacific Northwest Wheelchair Championships this week, which is an international event. Hey, is that real?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. What is it?
A bearded dragon.
Oh, bearded dragon. That's cool. Probably didn't catch that, but she stopped to show me her bearded dragon. Very Portland, somebody walking around with a lizard on their shoulder. And in some real estate news, Zillow recently revised some of their predictions for the next year. I talked a little bit about Zillow's predictions in my last video. Kind of surprised at how bullish they are on the market. And these are for national numbers, but they revised their home value index, predicting it to go up 3.9% over the next year. They revised it to 5.8%, so quite a big jump, and that's despite interest rates. Also, home sales are way down about 17% year over year, and affordability It's about at an all-time low. So high interest rates, really unaffordable homes relative to people's income. Sales are way down. A lot of things to indicate that you might see some deals coming on the horizon, but maybe not. So for all you buyers out there, I think you can still find a good deal. It's really just going to be case by case or property by property. If you're looking at something that's closer to the average price point, that's move-in ready, that's highly desirable, probably going to bump into a few other offers. If it's something that's been on the market for a couple of weeks, you might not bump into another offer. We've still bumped into some offers for some properties that have been on the market for a couple months recently. So it's still competitive out there for buyers. I think for all you sellers, if you price right, you should expect to sell quickly and potentially get a couple of competitive offers. It's felt like we're inching closer and closer to flipping from a seller's market to a buyer's market, but we just might not get there. For the most part, it really is a balanced market, so not a bad time to sell for sellers, and it's not a bad time for buyers, especially if home values continue to go up and maybe rates will go down a year or two and you can refi. And again, if you're thinking about moving here, if you have questions, you can call me, email, click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom call, text us, or hit that QR code with your phone if you're watching from TV like so many of you are watching YouTube these days. That'll take you to our website. Until next time, take care everyone. Make sure and subscribe if you made it to the end of this video if you want to see more videos about what it's like to live in Oregon.